Catherine L. Farris-Carter. I'm Chancery Court Judge in the 7th Chancery Court District.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, can you do the clap thing?
Just like this?
Yes. Okay, so when you speak, you're going to speak to her.
I'll speak to her.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Can you give me a little background info about yourself?
All right. I'm born and raised in the Mississippi Delta. Grew up in Sharkey County, down in a big town called Anguilla, Mississippi. Was one of 10 children, but I was reared by my great-grandparents and graduated from Henry Weathers High School, went to Jackson State University, and from there I went to Chicago Law School.
The camera moved a little bit. All right, you're good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How has North Mississippi Rural Legal Services impacted your life?
I would say probably 75% of the credit to North Mississippi Rural Legal Services for the position that I currently hold and my perspective and my outlook on the law and how it impacts citizens from all walks of life.
Complete this sentence. If it had not been for legal services.
If it had not been for legal services, I believe I would have been truly a different type of judge. I believe I would have always been a judge. That was always one of my dreams as a child watching television, but I truly believe I would have been a different type of judge.
Do you remember any great stories about anyone you've worked with in the Rural Legal Services?
Tons of them. First story I will remember is the individual who has put on this symposium today. That everyone called her Jenny, but her name is actually Catherine Kilgore, and my first name is Catherine, so we were instant friends when we met. But Catherine is just a fantastic, wonderful individual, has a great heart, just a wonderful spirit. And when we first started, after I first started at Legal Services, she did a lot of death penalty work. I never liked criminal work. I always wanted to be on the civil side of the shop, but because I knew Jenny, I would assist her on the cases. Well, on one occasion, we had the opportunity, we had to go down to Parchment because that's where our client was located. And when we got down there, you have to remember back in the time when this was, we got down there, they brought the inmate out, and you had the wall. We were separated, completely separated from each other. But the guard would not take his shackles off. And Jenny being, you have to know her. She's a very sweet, mild-mannered, mild-spoken person, and she kept asking the guard to take the shackles off. We are totally opposite in personalities. After she had asked about the third time, I felt the need to put my 2 cents in. I told him the law says thus, and so, and you are required to take his shackles off, and if you don't take his shackles off, we shall go and call the warden, and once we call the warden, we will do this, that, and the other. He looked at me and said, well, I don't see why you're making such a big deal about it. Don't nobody care. Well, he took the shackles off, and we finished the interview. And when we got outside at the gate, it dawned on me. Here were 2 females, one African-American, one Caucasian. We're deep off. We're out in, I think it's called Camp 13, where all the death penalty inmates are located. And I was getting very smart with this white prison guard. And I told them, I said, the next time it appears that I have lost my mind, do hit me, because they could have killed us, buried us off in Parchment. No one would have ever found the bodies. I mean, Parchment is a big place. So that was my first okay, this is insane. I've got to learn to have self-control. So, but I mean, it just bothered me that he would not do what was necessary, because we were not a danger to the inmate. The inmate was not a danger to us. We were completely separated. He just was being difficult. So I didn't like it.
Outside of working for the Rural Legal Services, what aspect of your career are you proudest of?
Family. Coming from a big family, I often will say from the bench, there are 2 sets of people that I do not tolerate being adversely affected. First of all would be children, minors, and senior citizens. Those are 2 groups that can't take care of themselves. They can't defend themselves. Everyone else in between, I think they can pretty much stick up for themselves. But those two set of people. So I like, but my biggest emphasis is on senior citizens because one day I will be one. So I believe in that old biblical adage that you treat others as you wish to be treated. So I'm hoping that when I get to be a senior citizen, it will be someone there willing to look out for me and take care of me.
What difficulties did you encounter with the legal workers in the establishment?
I was, when you said legal workers, do you mean just in general? First starting out with legal service, I think I was very, I guess, protected or blessed. One incident that happened when I first got out, first started working for legal services, I had two judges. The first judge was a very positive judge. His name was Nate Adams. He was the chancellor down in Washington County. Well, if anyone remembers legal services in the early days, you were baptismal by fire. You learned to practice law by simply being thrown headfirst into the fire. So I went to work on a Monday. The secretary came in and gave me a stack of cases this tall. The secretary told me I had a divorce trial set for Wednesday. I'm just started. I'm straight out of law school. I've never practiced law. Of course, well, I got the book down and I read it and I'm like, okay, this doesn't look too hard. You know, I watched plenty of television. I'd had moot court and all of that in law school. So I showed up over there at the courthouse and I was already sitting at the table. When my client came in the door, there were two other ladies that came in with her. I made the first bad rule in the practice of law. I made an assumption. I assumed that the two ladies that came in the door at the same time my client did were her witnesses because it was a fault ground divorce. We had to have a cooperating witness. Well, I was in my new suit my sister had bought me, and I put my case on and I was just rolling. And so I turned to my client and I asked her, you know, what's your witness name? Well, she had this startled look on her face. I don't know them, they're not with me. I said, but I thought they were your witness. She said, no, ma'am, no one told me to bring a witness. Well, of course, now sheer fear has come up on my face. And so I rested. Well, the judge looked at me, the other attorney looked at me. He stood up and he was about to make a motion because I had failed to prove my grounds. And thank goodness for having the judge that I did on my very first trial. He tapped the bench and said, we're going to have a 10-minute recess. He said, counsel, let me see you in chambers. And the other attorney had gotten up and we went back in chambers, and he said, you know, pull the book. We looked at everything. He said, you know you need a cooperating witness. I said, well, yes, sir. I made an assumption. And he said, what assumption? I said, well, I thought that the two ladies that came in with my client were her witnesses. And he's like, okay. So he saved me. He saved me. We went back out. We took a recess, and we were able to come back. The adverse thing that I had was another judge, and I won't say his name. In Greenville, a train goes across in the center of town. Well, I didn't know how long the train lasts, and I was late for court. It was about 10 minutes late. That's the first rule. You never be late for court. So I was 10 minutes late. So when I walked in the door, the judge went off, just ballistic, and just read me up one side and read me down the other side. And he said, and furthermore, you shall either pay a $100 fine or you shall be locked up. Well, I was young. I didn't understand. I looked the judge straight in the eye and said, well, you know, I just started work for legal services. I don't have $100, so I guess you'll just have to lock me up. The entire courtroom said, you know how you hear that inhale? Everyone inhaled. They were like, okay. And he said, well, I don't have time for this. We're ready to get started. Well, of course, I lost that first case. But afterwards, you know, he had calmed down. I went up and did what I should have done at the very first time. I apologized and begged his forgiveness. So everything worked out. So I'm like, that's not a judge I want to be. I will not be a judge like him. I want to be a judge like the first one.
How does the modern civil rights movement compare to that of the 60s?
I think there's far too much complacency today. There are entirely too many important issues that are still out there on the table. We have not arrived. And when I say we have not arrived, I don't mean just Black America, I mean all of America, because there are some issues, well, all issues touch all of the races, everyone that lives here in Mississippi, and it's the rest of the country. We've not arrived. We're still overlooking poverty for everyone. We're still overlooking substandard education. But those of us who have been immensely blessed, and I've just been blessed beyond blessing. There are other individuals like me who wish to forget what it was. Clearly, the visuals of what we had to do back in that time, the visuals are better today, but we haven't arrived. And a lot too many of individuals similarly situated as I am want to forget about it and move on.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
All right, great. Yeah.
That was so much better